Control, I don't see why boarding would be necessary. Perhaps if I sent over a sample container of my wares, you could inspect that. I mean, you wouldn't even need to send it back. Okay.
Domino's, Little Caesars, and Papa John's. Their rankings have shifted around over the years, but those are always the top four. Pizza Hut and Domino's have been neck and neck. Domino's recently obtained the #1 spot in terms of sales. Little Caesars and Papa John's have always been competitive with each other, but as of right now, Little Caesars is the third largest pizza chain in the US. I feel like they're actually bigger than most people perceive them to be. In 2017, they had $3.72 billion in sales, which is 3.5 times larger than they had 10 years ago. They have over 5,000 locations that are located in every US state. They sell a lot of pizzas. And of those 4 restaurants I mentioned, I'd say they stand out the most. And by that I mean they have a very different business model. I don't mean to insult the quality of their pizza or offend any of their loyal customers, but we all know what this is. It's good pizza for the price, right? If I were to set out to buy the highest quality pizza in town, I'm not going to Little Caesars. I'd probably sooner go to Pizza Hut or one of those other 3. But if I want something quick and cheap, well, that's a different story. And that's saying something. The idea behind fast food in general is to be quick and cheap, and to be so far ahead of their fast food competitors in both areas, I'd say they found their spot in the industry.
So I got all this large pie and the crazy bread and the sauce for $6. That's unbelievable.
Have you ever found yourself in a position where you need like 5 or 10 pizzas for a kid's birthday party or to celebrate after a softball game? It's perfect for that. But despite finding their place in the market, they've had some troubles, particularly in the late 90s and early 2000s. I would separate the existence of this company into 3 separate phases. From its beginning in the 1950s all the way until the early 90s, I'd group all that together into an expansionary period. Things weren't always perfect, but they were almost always growing. Then from the early 90s into the mid-2000s, that was shaky. Declining sales through most of it, and any increase they saw was minor and didn't really last. The final period was from the mid-2000s up until today, which again, they're back to expanding and back to success. I think we've outlined our rise and fall and rise again. Now what I'd like to do is try to provide some reasoning behind all of this. The first rise, going all the way back to the 1950s, there was a minor league baseball player named Mike Ilitch, who after 4 years in the league experienced a leg injury and was forced to quit professional baseball. A few years later, he and his wife Marion had saved up about $10,000 and used it to open a restaurant. Mike wanted to call it Pizza Treat, Marion wanted to call it Little Caesars, and they compromised by calling it Little Caesars Pizza Treat. Now that name's a little long, and it's easy to see how people would neglect to say the pizza treat part of it. Obviously that part was eventually dropped, but that was the first Little Caesars. After 3 years, they franchised a second location, and by the end of the 1960s, they were up to 50 of them. By the end of the 1970s, it was over 200, and this was a big part of their plan. Just open up a bunch of new restaurants, make them available to everyone, and get the name out there. The plan was put into full effect in the 1980s, over doubling their locations to 500 by 1984, and doubling again by 1986. Throughout the 1990s, they were hanging around 4,000 locations, even made some big deals with Kmart to add restaurants in hundreds of their locations. To help add to their plan of getting their name out there, they used some heavy advertising. As a rule, they would spend 5% of their annual sales on advertising, and they had a bunch of gimmicky, catchy campaigns. None of it was too serious. They had this crazy looking mascot who is a Little Caesar, makes sense. In the the 1970s, they started offering 2 pizzas for the price of 1, which started this whole campaign.
Little Caesar's Pizza, the very large value.
The whole
Pizza.
thing sounds like a joke, and I guess it was, but it was a very successful campaign. It became the thing that people thought of when they thought of Little Caesars. All of that led to high sales, but they also did a great job in managing costs. If you're going to sell 2 pizzas for the price of 1, you better be cutting costs somewhere, and hopefully it's not just in the quality of your ingredients. They did it by making their restaurants carry out only. You can't dine inside of a Little Caesars. You walk in, pick up your pizza, get out of there. It saves money in so many ways. They don't have to pay servers or wash dishes. Their buildings are smaller, which makes them cheaper, but also makes it easier for them to open up so many so fast. Little Caesars saves a lot of money by not allowing you to eat there. All of these things combine to make a successful restaurant, and I would say it helps explain the rise of Little Caesars. Now, on to the fall. Let me give you a few figures to help illustrate.
Hold position. You do not have authorization.
Unread inbox messages make me ill.